$20. And I bought a couple of those because they had them side by side in the catalog, the graduated cylinders with, I mean, the cylinder with no graduation, just glass cylinder. You got $12 for that, that this is supposed to float in. So you could spend $32 on this test kit. This thing right here, which I'm gonna show you, costs $100. Now
A
sells.
good hydrometer at an auto parts store is only $15 or $20 is probably done yours.
Well, this is laboratory type.
Yeah.
And it comes out of a laboratory catalog, which means it's twice as,
Yeah.
Well, I think we're either got 50 or
the
250.
50 will probably.
Maybe this fat 50 will do it.
Fat 50. It's got, it's not long enough. No, that's not long enough. Let me try this. Now, in truth, we're gonna get a little,
Interference?
little interference. What do you call that?
With friction,
Uh,
tight fit. 20 seconds.
Anybody know how many ounces of this it takes to kill you?
Oh,
Is it
not
one?
much.
Probably. No, this probably won't give me a good answer. Oh, look at that sucker. Now, 1.000 is water. And glycol runs down, it'll say on there probably, maybe it doesn't. I've got something that says it. Oh, Jerry wants me to do it in this probably. That's supposed to read about 1.05 or 1.06.
1.060.
Okay. Now, that's probably not on there, but I've got it on here. I don't have enough of these, but I didn't intend to have you do a whole lot with it anyway. Here, I made up these because this shows you percent by volume, the specific gravity, see we're down, and then the freezing point. This is to go with this kind of equipment where you know, you're supposed to have it a little more freestanding because you get a little, what do you call that stuff?
Drag?
No, it's,
Capillary action type
yeah,
related to?
yeah.
I can't think of what the proper term is either, but it's related to.
That's not the word, but that's
It's
close.
kind of like it.
But you get a little interference.
Hysteresis?
It's hysteresis, that's how
But
it's
you know,
good.
there's
I
an
like it.
interesting, by way of going into this, there's an interesting one. I'll have to check and see what the range on is, and type of hydrometer for sale now that I think CChem offers. That is it's much less fragile and so on. It's a little square unit with a little indicator in it, a little arrow type indicator. You fill it with the fluid and the arrow will come up to proper specific gravity.
Now-
Problem with that being
Okay.
bubbles on the
Yeah.
arrow.
This, you can't follow an ethylene glycol chart because this isn't all ethylene glycol. This has got all this other junk in it. So we use their chart or our own because they don't have specific gravity on theirs. So the hydrometer doesn't work. But I want to show you how the refractometer works. And you start with, this is a spyglass you look through here, and you're supposed to have this thing clean and that thing clean. And then you got a little squeeze bulb down here. You got one for battery acid or whatever, but I don't know what good that's for. But you put your little tube in the hole. Now, most of you are probably not very good at that. So we suck up a few drops of this. And then we come up here and we put it on our, oh, we gotta push the bulb here. We're supposed to get it on this glass.
Real lucky anyways can show them how to work it.
Okay, so now we press down on this, and I don't think this is gonna work. I haven't done this in a couple of years. Then I look through here. And you gotta look up at a strong light. Oh, yes, it works. And it will tell you what the freezing point is. So let me look. I can't. See, freezing negative goes up when you look in there. Wait a minute, let me get rid of this right here. So we're not dribbling all over the place. Okay, now you can look in there and read the freeze point right off the chart. More accurate.
What month is she, Jerry?
I think about 7.
It's a boy.
That's pretty quick. it down.
You gotta point up the light enough so it'll be
I
clear.
can see it.
It'll be right between the black and the white. And of course, negative goes up. You look at the left side of the chart, that's in Fahrenheit.
You can see it.
Oh, yeah.
I read that as -11.
That's pretty, that's pretty accurate. That's what that says here, minus
We're
those
1.06. Oh. Well,
Might be -10, but, it's
One-
partially, I think, we're not floating as cleanly
Yeah.
as.
I wonder how that works.
1
How do you do that?
Pretty good. That's 1.06, which would give you right close.
Minus
1.064 is -11, so we'd say we might be reading
That might be
1.0,
10.
1.062. This thing, this handheld thing might not be quite as accurate as.
As we were talking, the hydrometer cost $20. That's what it cost me out of the book. I can get a cylinder that it floats in without, just a
Yeah.
plain glass cylinder that they recommend for it. That costs 12 something. And this thing right here, you can get from Dow for maybe slightly over $100.
Well, I think
This
we
is
all-
what
we should all have one
Pat
of these.
uses in the lab, this right here. Now, most of your customers aren't gonna wanna buy this stuff because they, to them, it's a once-a-year test. So we do it for them, no charge. It's one of our services.
Very reasonable. But it's not gonna work on this thing.
Why not?
Well, and plus the fact is, I'm gonna
But
give Jerry
if
this
it's-
one.
But if
so
we've
he
got
can
a
try
chart
one.
to go by.
Oops. I'm donating that hydrometer to you. 'Cause I was walking
No, what I'm
around
saying,
service.
if you've got a chart to go by.
I'm also
Sorry.
donating this approximately 40% to you because I'm not taking those back.
I saved this for my car.
Hopefully on the plane you'll get little bottles of.
Did I show you this one?
Yes, I'm here to check your Jack Daniels.
Jennifer Flowers. That's what that is, the Jennifer part. That's kind
Jennifer Flowers.
of- Bill Clinton's girlfriend,
Oh.
or ex-girlfriend now.
Well, I like the picture of the other side.
Yes.
Feeling good.
See where his hand is?
I
That was
noticed it
from
right
one of
away.
our friends.
Jennifer Flowers.
Geez, I got the Bills schedule. Oh, Super Bowl's not on this.
No, that's
Uh-oh.
expired. That's
Uh-oh,
expired.
this is an omen.
But with a chart, if you've got the specific gravity, you've got the freeze point.
That's
right?
why we did the specific gravity thing.
Let me
It's
make a copy
easier
of that
to.
before I give it to you.
As long as you're making copies, Jerry.
Well, I wasn't intending
Copies of
everybody would
these.
need that, I just thought I'd show it to them. Okay, Dowtherm, any questions on Dowtherm? They have a second product called Dow Frost, which is propylene glycol, which is used in food applications, or in your drinking, if you got an RV vehicle and you wanna fill the traps, like you're drinking, your kitchen sink or your holding tank for your drinking water, you don't put ethylene glycol in there. You put in propylene glycol, which of course costs more, isn't as good a freeze protector, but it does the job, and they call it, their brand name is Dow Frost. But that's, if it's a food application, it's a food processing plant, they might have propylene glycol in there rather than ethylene. Interesting. But, I've got a customer that buys propylene in about 10-drum lots, and I think we charge them about like, well, I don't know what we charge. I think it costs about 80 cents a pound, or, well, that's not so bad. 9 pounds a gallon, 7, so it's in the same ballpark price-wise. I guess it's because they always sell Dowtherm by the gallon, and they sell, Dow probably sells Dow Frost by the gallon, but straight propylene glycol is,
So where the Dow's main plant is, near Midland, Michigan? Is that where?
I don't know if that's where they make it or not. Dow has plants in Texas and all around. I mean, we buy it through distributor. Dow would sell it to one of my truckload. Drums, and we sell drums pretty much year round even. So I always keep some in stock, but for the guy who wants to buy one or two as a replenishment, you know, he'll buy it from you, but he's not gonna pay our price, he's buying a lot.
Point on this too, is that using a specific gravity, using a hydrometer as opposed to your handy dandy tool there, is that people have got to remember, if you're ever using a hydrometer for anything, that you have to go with standard temperature.
Yes. That's why
Or
your temperature.
it says on at 65.
Yeah, if you pull, for
Is that
instance,
well-
pull out of a system that's hot or cold, you really gotta let it cool off before you start
Right,
checking.
or warm it up,
Because that will
or
affect the
whatever.
specific gravity.
Because it will affect it very nearly as much as you watch, not as much, but relatively. It's like watching conductivity bounce around as the temperature drops or raises. It's real important to have it pretty close.
Okay, time's running out. I'm not at the end of my agenda. I don't know where my agenda went. My golly, I found it. Freeze point charts, inhibitors.
Stability indexes.
Stability indexes. I have talked about this before here. You all should at least have a working familiarity with what Langley index means and Reisner index. There are a couple other indexes, Multifarious. St. Paul of the water treatment world created his own. The other guys weren't good enough for him, but I ignore that.
What's he talking
Not much. I just like to dabble. Okay, stability index is way back this Frenchman Langlier, can't remember his first name now, not that anybody cares. He decided to determine what the saturation point of calcium was in water, because it would tell him, or the stability of water. So he made up his little index, little formula, which I'm passing around here, and I've passed this around before. Pat probably doesn't remember that.
No,
Okay. Okay. And it's a relatively simple formula. Up at the top of the page there, it describes what the calcium carbonate saturation index of cooling water in predicting the scaling or corrosive tendencies of the water. This is the kind of thing we do when we get a raw water sample. We try to figure out by using the formula whether the water is scaling or corrosive. Our lake water is fairly well balanced. Most of the waters will do a little of both anyway. The index can be calculated with reasonable accuracy using the data down below. You get the values for A, B, and C, and D from the table down below. This means you need to know, and this is why on the cooling water survey, I want to know what the temperature is of the water, preferably the high temperature.
It's a 10 test.
Going into the tub. Yeah, what they normally operate at is their high temperature. In other words, I can get all that other stuff, but I end up guessing about 3/4 of the time to tell you what the temperature is. Total solids, there's only two numbers. You gotta fit in between there. Temperature, of course, is B, okay? Calcium hardness, this isn't the total hardness, but it's the calcium hardness. Now, if you don't have a calcium hardness test, of course, we do that in our lab, but it's usually in the neighborhood of 60 to 80%. I use normally about 75% as the average of the total hardness, yeah. You allow some for magnesium. So then you get your C value from that chart, and then total alkalinity is also here, and you get your D value. So, using the pHs, meaning the saturation pH, 9.3 plus A plus B minus C and D. Then using the actual pH of the water, you gotta test the water, you get your saturation index, your Langlier, what's called a Langlier index of the pH of the system minus the saturation pH. And then if that index is 0, the water is in chemical balance. If the index is positive, it's a scaling type of water. If it's negative, it's a corrosive. And the closer they are, of course, to zero on that. Nobody uses Langley anymore. They use the Reisner, which is the next one down. But you do the same calculations. The Reisner stability index modification of is 2 times the saturation pH from up above minus the system pH. And then you get a value of the stability index. Above 6.5 is corrosive, below 6 is tendency form scale. If you flip that page over and look at the back side, this is the Reisner stability, and you look at the numbers on the left-hand side, you'll notice that 7 roughly is the center of this what they call a stable zone. As you go up, the lower values, you get into the heavy scaling type waters. This is what helps us select some of the cooling water products. If it was, and that's what the side we more often see. If you go down the scale, or the number of the Reisner stability index increases, you get into corrosive waters. Some of those would be waters that were fairly soft, low pH. Go to another. So that's just a ballpark idea of what the Reisner does. Now, you're going to hear on occasion, rare occasion, a customer say something about his Reisner is such and such, or can you tell me what my Reisner index is? He may be testing you to see if you know what to do and how to do it. Well, you can do it with this page in your hand. You can sit right there and do your own testing and tell him what his Reisner is and what that means. Quite often, when you send us a raw water or makeup water or something like that, we do that. However, the truth is, you want the Reisner of the cooling water cycled up. So if you send me a raw water sample, I'm only going to be guessing. The Reisner of the raw water is going to be a lot less or different than the Reisner cycled up, because as you can readily see, the temperature will be the same maybe, but the total solids, or the dissolved solids, of course, will be a lot higher. You'll most always be in the second range. Parts per million calcium hardness, that's going to go way up. Now, what you do is, if you only have, let's say you only have a raw water, which is usually the case for us, you send me the city water sample makeup. I can take the total solids and multiply, let's say I'm going to figure out at 5 cycles. I'm going to take, supposing it's 100 parts per million total solids. Skip that. Let's say it's 200 parts
Think
per
like
million.
your reward, 300.
Okay, 300 times 5 is going to be 1,500. It's going to be above the range, but I'll use 0.2 as my A. And the calcium hardness was, let's say it was 60. Multiplying that times 5 will put it at about 300. So I look on the chart here, and I'm going to be in the range of 2.1 would be my C factor. Temperature again will soon remain the same. 5 times the total alkalinity, we'll pick a figure off here of, say, 700 by multiplying by 5, whatever it was. So now I've got all those figures multiplied by 5. Now we know things don't cycle up like that necessarily, but let's use that as predicting what the Reisner will be. So now we've got all that, but what don't we have?
pH.
pH. What's the system pH going to be? We know what the pH of the makeup water is, but we don't multiply by 5 to get the system pH after it's cycled up. So what we do is, ta-da, remember a lost or something? We have this little sheet here, predicted recirculating water pH based on what the total alkalinity would be.
Oh, this is the, yeah, we have this. This is the PRWPHTA chart.
What? Oh, PRW, okay. Okay, so I just said, stupidly, that the pH of the system, we decided the total alkalinity cycled up would be 700, so we go way up at the top of the thing here and cross over the 700 till we hit the solid line, and we find a pH out will be about 9.2.
Oh, it just makes it a lot better.
Well, in fact of the matter is, this may or may not work out that way, because you're driving off carbon dioxide, water doesn't cycle up. But somebody made this chart out, and it, for lack of having the real thing, we'll use this.
Pretty good ballpark.
Yep. So, we look at 9.2 and say, gee, I don't really like that, so we'll recalculate everything at 4 cycles, because we don't wanna get that high. We'll hold them to 4 cycles, and the total alkalinity would be 500, and now we're down to pH of 9 anyway.
What's a 90% confidence?
Well, 90% of the time, it's gonna be in between those, which obviously gives you a fairly broad range.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a little more fun.
Which brings us back around to why last summer, halfway through the summer or so, we started saying that we need to take pH tests on cooling tower water
Cycled up.
and cycle up and record them on our test report, so that when they come in, Grant can spot check them and do a rise or stability index on them, or I could, to make sure that we're getting, that we're staying inside the solubility curve.
We're interested, a lot of times you're doing that because you're having a problem and you're trying to figure out, what is it that's causing this problem? And maybe we find out that by doing a riser like this in advance, though, we can look at that and say, boy, no matter what we do, this pH is too high. Now, what are we gonna do? We can't crank them down to 2 cycles, we can't. We've got people we do that to, but it might be a lot more economical for them to add acid to the system. That's when it's time to start using sulfuric acid, and you can't get the pH down in a reasonable range, because it's just gonna be a scaling type water if you don't.
Point of information for you is that we have customers that don't like to use sulfuric acid.
Most of them.
Because it's, dangerous to handle.
It's a SARA Title III report at the end of the year, and it's a reportable chemical.
So we have them using 3600 dry acid and scalar instead,
Without the dye.
without the dye, without the red dye. And we have them mixing that in a tank with a mixer and pumping that in. They go through a
Rather
whole.
expensive way to do life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Quit grinning,
You
Craig.
have no conscience at all, Craig.
Oh, a little bit.
But there are,
I
here's the
suggested other
situation.
possibilities.
This is down at Blair in Warren. We sold them the whole setup and the pump and the controller and everything. They put the sulfuric acid in automatically, pumping it right from a pail. Nobody's gonna touch it. And lo and behold, they didn't have it going for more than 2 weeks, and they blew a plastic tubing off of a fitting and ran sulfuric acid all over everything. And everybody got panicky. Everybody got jumpy. Because the fitting went, and they just went, they got, sulfuric acid got pumped down the drain and nobody wanted to handle it. Of course, they went through rags on it and it dissolved the rags. When it does, it smokes a little bit. So they got all worked up, and they just said, no more. We're not gonna touch anything like, in fact, that's probably the pail still sitting there out there.
I wouldn't doubt it.
5-gallon pail. Nobody's gonna handle that sulfuric acid anymore. Give us something else. 3600 dry acid and scalar, you could scoop that with your hand if you wanted to. You don't advise that, but you could. And they make a comment about once a year that, boy, that's an awful expensive way to do it. I know that. I still think you should be using sulfuric acid.
In the old days, when chromate and sulfuric acid were the primary cheap treatment methods, you could walk into a place, I don't care how careful they were, there'd be a big hole in their cement, where a pump had at one point or another leaked, or somebody spilled it, or the drum leaked. I mean, you just can't use the stuff without getting in trouble. My guys have to handle this and mix it with chemicals occasionally, and it chews up clothes. I don't care, they wear these rubber aprons that are so long, and then their socks are gone, or you gotta get out of those things, like right now, or the hose flips up in the air, God, anything can happen, and it does. So, we try hard, and the polymers that we use can take a lot in terms of high pH. If you get above 9, you're gonna probably have a problem.
I got some more bad news too. The towers that they're gonna put in their Warren plant, they decided because there's gonna be a big city water bill that they're gonna use their well, which happens to be the same kind of water, or worse, is that out in the other place, they're gonna have to use it there too. I felt pretty bad when I heard that.
Okay, the last thing on our list, which is important that I want you to know about, this is mostly just keeping you informed of things. Chemicals, being the bad word in the world today of any kind, and the disposal of chemicals and the disposal of drums being a problem. More and more companies are going to returnable totes. In like automobile plants, it's almost all totes. We used to do, I don't know, we got about 30 totes right now going back and forth to Generous Motors in Saginaw. And that works out well because we take it over in our truck, we pick it up, and our truck's 2 or 3 or 4 times a week going over there. So it's pretty easy. A 220 gallon tote, which of course is the equivalent of 4 drums, these plastic jacketed, yellow metal wire jacketed things that GM likes. Cost $1,000 a piece. I was concerned about that because I can buy 4 drums, plastic drums, for about $70 total. And at the time, we were doing a lot of those on a returnable basis. So you gotta replace them once in a while, so it was figuring out how am I gonna get my money for this tote by, adding whatever cents a gallon I put on, 20, 30, 40 cents a gallon to the price to cover the cost of that container. And I figured back those few years ago that, this is a very competitive price business, so I can't add on a lot. But if I figured I'd have to I wanted to pay for the tote in 2 years. So I figured an average tote made 17 trips. So I figured, okay, if I made 35 trips, I was at the break-even point. And then at the time I was stewing over, I wonder if a tote will last that many trips, especially in a General Motors plant, where they're kind of rough on things. What I have found is we've got totes now that have been 70 trips. They just go. Those totes last forever because even though they occasionally got to replace a valve or something, the totes work well. Okay, so we have customers now using cooling. I don't have any boiler water customers using this because most of them don't want 4 drums worth of stuff at a time. And I don't even want them to buy a tote because it'll take, if you got 1 trip a year, you never pay for your tote. But we do have some cooling water treatment customers. I have one that comes every month. They're about 40 miles away. They drive over because I told them they had to pay for the freight back and forth. They bring their truck over bring back an empty and pick up a full one, cooling water treatment. We've got a couple of those accounts using cooling water treatment. But because some of the smaller use customers still want to have void drums, we decided we'd get into the smaller ones. Now the Portafeed that Nalco has is probably I forget how many gallons that is.
Well, they have the 110, and then they have the one that now,
They got a big one.
well,
They got a 70 gallon, I think, too.
a 70 gallon, okay.
But they've even got a 15 gallon. Isn't that the terrible?
The micro
prices?
mini,
Yeah.
$1.20 a pound
All
more.
it is a drum that they haul back and forth, but they charge you with bundle because they bring it in their truck and they pick it up. But the customer doesn't want to handle this stuff. The other concern now that the customer has is not just the tote isn't the only problem. That eliminates drums. It's returnable, but most of these people for hazardous chemicals, almost any kind of chemicals, they're supposed to have secondary